Welcome to Marta Family Secrets Stories. My name is Clara Hennessy. I am 32 years old, and I work as a certified nursing assistant in a small city tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains of western North Carolina. I have spent the last several years of my life learning how to read the small, quiet changes in elderly people that most families miss entirely. The slight slur that appears after a new medication. The way a person holds a spoon differently on a Tuesday than they did on a Monday. The difference between genuine confusion and exhaustion that looks like confusion to someone who is not paying close attention. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you are listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. 3 months ago, at a family meeting with 14 people packed into my parents' living room, my aunt was reading aloud from a printed vacation itinerary. Hawaii. 10 days. The Hilton on Oahu. 14 people, 4 rooms, excursions already booked, luggage tags already ordered. And somewhere in the middle of all that excitement, with the kids bouncing on the furniture and my brother pulling up resort photos on his phone, I heard myself say the words out loud for the first time. I have never been to the ocean. The room went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. 2 seconds of something that could have been guilt or recognition or basic human decency. And then my father, Frank, laughed. "You are not coming," he said. "Nobody wants to spend 10 days babysitting an old woman. So congratulations, Clara. That is you." I looked around that room. 13 faces. My brother. My sister. My mother. My aunt and uncle. The cousins. The children. Not one person told him to stop. Not one person even looked at me. I swallowed everything I felt in that moment and said, "Of course." And then I bent down to fix my grandmother's blanket where it had slipped from her lap, and her hand shot out and gripped my wrist so hard I could feel each individual finger pressing into the bone. She pulled me close, and she whispered 5 words so urgent and so clear that I still hear them in the quiet before I fall asleep. 4 days later, I understood exactly what she meant. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you are listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Let me take you back to where this all began, because nothing that happened in that living room appeared out of nowhere. It had been building for years, and I had been too loyal, too quiet, and too convinced that family meant something to see it clearly. It started in the spring of 2 years ago. I was working full-time at an assisted living facility on the west side of town, earning $18.50 an hour. The work was hard in the way that genuinely meaningful work is always hard. Lifting, bathing, medication rounds, charting, learning each resident's particular rhythm well enough to notice when something had shifted. I was good at it. I understood the language of aging bodies and aging minds in a way that took most people years to develop. That was when my father called a family meeting. Grandma Dot had started having what he described as memory issues. She would misplace her reading glasses. She would ask the same question twice in one afternoon. Ordinary things, normal things, the kind of things that happen to sharp people in their late 70s without meaning anything serious. But Frank made it sound urgent. He made it sound like an emergency that required immediate family action. "We need to talk about Mom's care," he said, standing in the center of the living room with his hands clasped in front of him like a man delivering a corporate presentation. 14 of us had gathered. My parents, my older brother Nathan and his wife, my sister Patricia and her husband, their children, my uncle and aunt, their grown son. Everyone wearing expressions of practiced concern. Frank laid out the situation in careful, measured language. Grandma needed more help. Someone should consider moving in with her. And then he looked directly at me. "Clara, you work with elderly people anyway. It makes sense that you would be the one to move in and look after her. It is what you are trained for. And honestly, what else are you doing with your life right now?" I looked around the room. Nathan was staring at his phone. Patricia was nodding as though this were the most reasonable suggestion she had ever heard. No one asked if I wanted to. No one offered to share the responsibility. No one even asked if Grandma Dot herself had been consulted. I said yes. I always said yes. And they had been counting on exactly that. I moved into Grandma Dot's house the following week. I reduced my hours at the facility from 40 a week to 24. My monthly income dropped from nearly $3,000 to just over $1,100. No one offered to compensate me. No one suggested it. It was family, they said. That word doing all the heavy lifting it always does when someone wants something from you for free. The work began immediately, and it never stopped. Every morning at 7 I would crush Grandma Dot's blood pressure medication and cholesterol medication and record the time and dosage and her blood pressure reading and any changes in her alertness or mood in the blue spiral notebook I kept on the kitchen counter. Grandma Dot would watch me write and sometimes tell me I did not need to document everything so carefully. I like keeping track, I told her. It helps me remember. What I did not tell her was that I had learned through 3 years of professional caregiving that the truth only matters when you can prove it. Documentation was not a habit for me. It was an instinct. A survival skill built from watching families rewrite the story of what happened to their parents and grandparents when it became convenient to do so. The days blurred together. Grocery runs. Physical therapy twice a week. Pill organizers refilled every Sunday evening. No days off. No vacations. No life existing outside the walls of that house and the facility where I still worked part-time. And here is the thing that sat inside me like a splinter the entire time. I had never been to the ocean. 32 years old. Born and raised 3 hours from the Carolina coast. Never seen it. My family had taken beach trips. I could list every single one if you gave me a minute. The summer of 2008 when they went to Myrtle Beach. Spring break in 2011 at Topsail Island. 4th of July weekend in 2014. Easter in 2018 at Hilton Head. I was not invited to any of them. There was always a reason. Too expensive for one more person. Someone needed to stay and watch the house. In 2018, my mother actually told me that I sunburned too easily and that they were doing me a favor by leaving me behind. So when I said those words at the November meeting, it was not a hint. It was not a request. It was a fact that had been accumulating for 32 years, shaped by every trip I had been excluded from and every reason I had been given that was dressed up as consideration. They laughed anyway. Meanwhile, the rest of my family had become ghosts in Grandma Dot's life. Nathan visited once a month and rarely stayed more than 20 minutes. Patricia called regularly to ask how Grandma was doing but had not stepped through the front door in months. Frank came every Sunday after church and went straight to Grandma's office to review her paperwork before leaving. My mother brought food occasionally and took photographs with Grandma for her social media, posting them with captions about how blessed she was to have family time, when the total time she had actually spent in that house across all those visits barely added up to 3 hours. They knew how to look like a caring family. Not one of them knew how to actually be one. Then in early November, Frank announced the Hawaii trip. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone when my aunt began reading the itinerary aloud. 6:47 in the evening. 14 people in that living room. The resort on Oahu. 10 days beginning January 18th. Everyone electric with excitement, the children bouncing, Nathan showing off resort pool photos, Patricia planning which snorkeling excursion she wanted to book first. That was when I said it. I have never been to the ocean. And Frank laughed. And said what he said. And the room let him. I swallowed. I fixed Grandma Dot's blanket. And her hand found my wrist. 4 days later I found a deposit receipt tucked inside a folder in Frank's desk. Sunrise Valley Memory Care. $12,500. Dated November 3rd. The same afternoon as the meeting. The same afternoon Frank had told me I was not going to Hawaii and then, hours later, hugged me and told me I was part of the family and that he appreciated everything I was doing. I felt the floor shift under me. Not metaphorically. Physically. The kind of sick, dropping sensation you get when something you trusted turns out to have been hollow the whole time. But here is what Frank did not know. And here is what I want you to stay for. Because what happens next inside that house is something I am still not sure I would believe if I had not lived every minute of it myself. Stay with me. Because the real story is only just beginning. The week after I found the deposit receipt, small things started happening. Quiet things. The kind of things that would be easy to dismiss individually but that began to assemble into a pattern once I was paying close enough attention. On a Wednesday in mid-November, I went to refill Grandma.'s prescriptions at the pharmacy. The pharmacist looked at the bag she had pulled and paused. The trazodone, she said. That is new, correct? I did not know what she was talking about. I asked her to explain. For sleep disturbance, she said. 50 milligrams at bedtime. It will make her quite drowsy. I checked the label. Prescribed October 28 by Grandma.'s primary physician, a Dr. Alan Morrison, for sleep disturbance. Grandma. Had never complained about sleep. Not once. Not to me. I opened my notebook right there at the pharmacy counter and flipped back through my October entries. Every night without exception I had noted her sleep pattern. Consistent. Uninterrupted. No wandering. No insomnia. No complaints. Who picked this up originally? I asked. The pharmacist checked her records. Franklin Hennessy. Listed as authorized. 2 weeks ago. My father had picked up a sedating medication I knew nothing about, prescribed for a problem Grandma did not have, by a doctor who had apparently been in contact with Frank about her condition without ever speaking to me. I brought the medication home and placed it in the cabinet. I said nothing. That Sunday Frank arrived after church at his usual time. Grandma was sitting in the armchair doing a crossword puzzle, sharper than she had been all week, asking me questions about the weather and about whether I had heard from my friend Willa recently. Frank offered to bring Grandma her vitamins while I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. I heard the rattle of a pill bottle from the living room. I heard him say something in a low voice. I heard Grandma thank him. By 3 in the afternoon, Grandma was asleep on the couch. She slept until nearly 7:30 in the evening. When she woke up, she was disoriented in a way I had never seen before in 3 years of daily care. She did not know how long she had been sleeping. She asked whether she had missed Sunday dinner. Her eyes were unfocused for nearly 20 minutes. I checked the pill organizer after Frank left. The Sunday evening trazodone slot was empty. It was not even bedtime. I counted the pills remaining in the bottle. It had been filled 3 days ago. There should have been 28 left. There were 26. I sat at the kitchen table and wrote in my notebook with hands that were absolutely steady, because I had made myself steady, because I understood that whatever this was, I needed to be steady for it. Care log. Grandma. Unusually sedated from approximately 2 in the afternoon until 7:30 in the evening following Frank's visit. Disoriented upon waking. No sedation on any other day this week. 2 pills unaccounted for. The following Sunday was identical. And the Sunday after that. Every time Frank visited, Grandma ended up sleeping for hours. Every time I counted the pills afterward, the number was wrong. 3 missing each visit. He was not helping her sleep. He was manufacturing symptoms. He was building a picture of a woman in decline using medication she did not need and had never asked for, so that when an evaluation came, there would be something that looked like evidence. I stood at the kitchen window one afternoon and heard Frank on the phone in the driveway. The window was open. His voice carried clearly on the cold air.
Yeah,
he said. The evaluation is set for December 14th. Rosie won't be there. She does not need to know yet. Just make sure the language in the assessment is strong enough for the intake paperwork. Thanks, Alan. I stood at the sink and did not move. He was talking to Dr. Morrison. The doctor who had prescribed medication Grandma did not need. And the evaluation, whatever it was, had already been decided before it happened. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes. I wrote down every word I had just heard, the time, the date, the names. Then I went back inside, finished making lunch, and called Grandma in from the garden as though nothing had changed. But everything had changed. 4 days later, while Frank was at work and my mother was at her exercise class, I went into Grandma's home office. The folder was in the bottom left drawer of her desk. Thick. Manila colored. Labeled Ruth Medical Planning, using Grandma's legal name that nobody except official documents ever used. My hands were trembling so badly I had to set the folder down on the desk and press my palms flat against the wood before I could make myself open it. Inside was a facility intake form. Sunrise Valley Memory Care. Applicant listed as Ruth and Hennessy. Completed by Franklin Hennessy, son and responsible party. I turned to the cognitive status section and I read what my father had written about his own mother, and my stomach turned over completely. Late-stage dementia. Patient nonverbal at times. Does not recognize family members. Wanders at night. Requires 24-hour supervision. History of aggression. Every single word was a lie. I opened my notebook and turned to my entry from 4 days prior. Grandma beat me at Scrabble 302 to 198. Remembered a book she had recommended the previous week. Made a joke about my spelling. I turned back further. Grandma walked independently to the mailbox, sorted through the mail, asked specific and detailed questions about my nephew's college application process. No wandering. No aggression. No nonverbal episodes. 47 pages of daily entries covering more than 3 years. Not a single entry supporting anything Frank had written on that form. But the intake form was not the worst of what I found. There were bank statements. An account in Grandma's name I had never heard of. A care fund. The balance on October 1st was $63,000. The balance on November 30th was $24,000. I traced the withdrawals line by line. $12,500 to Sunrise Valley. $8,600 to something called Hennessy Family Travel LLC. $18,000 to Frank Hennessy's personal account, labeled Caregiver Reimbursement. I had looked up the cost of 14 people flying to Hawaii and staying at a resort for 10 days. $38,600. Frank was funding the family vacation with Grandma's care money. The money that was supposed to protect her. The money she had spent her life accumulating. He was taking it. Spending it on resort rooms and luau tickets and snorkeling excursions, and then he was going to have her declared incompetent so she could not stop him, and then he was going to put her in a locked memory care facility and continue spending whatever was left. And he had needed me out of the way to do it. At the bottom of the folder I found a printed email. Frank to Dr. Morrison. Dated November 1st. Alan, we need to move on the capacity evaluation. She is becoming resistant about signing the power of attorney. Can you arrange something for mid-December? The doctor's reply was dated the following day. I will schedule for December 14th. Based on what you have described, I anticipate supporting a finding of incapacity. This will give Sunrise the documentation they require. I will copy you on the formal letter. The evaluation was 3 weeks away and the outcome had already been agreed upon. I photographed everything. Every page. Every statement. Every email. I put it all back exactly as I had found it, closed the drawer, and walked back to the kitchen where Grandma's crossword puzzle was sitting half-finished on the table. I sat down across from her empty chair and let myself feel it. All of it. The weight of what I had just seen pressing down through my chest and into my stomach. The grief of it. The fury of it. The deep, hollow ache of understanding that the people who were supposed to love you had been treating you like an obstacle. I did not cry. I picked up my pen and I started building a case. If you are still here, I need you to stay, because what Grandma does next is the part of this story that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Over the following week I built my evidence the way I had been trained to build documentation in my professional life. Methodical. Specific. Dated. Verifiable. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop with 2 columns. The facility intake forms claims on one side. My documented reality on the other. Claim, patient nonverbal at times. Reality, 1,095 consecutive days of recorded lucid conversation, every single one noted in the blue notebook. Claim, does not recognize family members. Reality, Grandma had asked about Nathan's children by name last week, remembered Patricia's job promotion from the previous spring, recalled every family birthday without prompting. Claim, wanders at night. Reality, 0 wandering incidents in 42 months of shared living. I sleep lightly the way caregivers learn to sleep, with one ear always partially open, and she had never once left her room at an unusual hour. 8 printed pages when I was finished. Each claim refuted with 10 or more specific log entries, dated and timed. Her mind was not failing. It was being erased on paper so they could erase her in real life. I went online and accessed the pharmacy records. Grandma had authorized me years ago. Prescription history confirmed what I already knew. Trazodone picked up by Franklin Hennessy on November 14th. Not me. Him. I counted pills every Sunday after he left. 12 pills missing over 4 weeks. 3 per visit. He was not managing a sleep problem. He was creating symptoms for an evaluation that had already been decided. Then on a Tuesday evening near the end of November, something happened that I could not have arranged if I had tried. My cousin accidentally added me to the family group text message thread. I had 3 minutes before someone noticed and removed me. But I saw enough. Patricia's message first. Does Clara suspect anything? Frank's reply. No. She thinks we are just going on vacation. My brother's message. What if she tries to attend the evaluation? Frank again. She will not. I scheduled it on a day she works and Morrison knows not to contact her about it. And then my mother. I feel strange about not telling her. Frank's reply was the one that settled into my bones and stayed there. We are not lying to her. We are protecting Mom. Clara simply does not understand how serious things have gotten. I screenshotted everything. Saved it to 3 separate cloud accounts. Sent it to my personal email. Then I sat very still and let the full picture assemble itself in front of me. They were not just lying to me individually. They were coordinating around me. Actively. Deliberately. As a group. I went deeper into the financial records. Grandma had given me her care fund password 2 years earlier when she had asked me to check a balance for her. I had written it in the back of my notebook. I logged in and downloaded every statement from the current year. I looked at the November transactions and I read the category labels Frank had used to describe them. Medical transport services. $2,380. I traced the transaction. 14 airline tickets to Hawaii. Therapeutic respite program. $6,150. 10 nights at a resort hotel, for rooms. Patient wellness activities. $2,890. Luau packages. Snorkeling excursions. A Pearl Harbor tour. They were going to the ocean on her money. Every sunrise they would watch from that resort balcony, every meal they would eat, every activity they would photograph and post and remember for the rest of their lives, paid for by the woman they were calling too confused to manage her own finances. And I had never been to the ocean. I had been here, in this house, crushing her blood pressure medication at 7 every morning and recording her vital signs and sleeping with one ear open in case she needed anything in the night. On the evening of November 30th, at 22 minutes past 9, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my evidence folders spread in front of me when I heard Grandma's bedroom door open. She came out in her robe and slippers, moving slowly toward the kitchen, and when she stepped into the light I saw something in her face that made me go very still. She looked more alert than she had in weeks. Sharp-eyed. Focused. The way she had looked the day I moved in, before the Sunday visits and the missing pills. You have been going through Danny's desk, she said, using Frank's childhood nickname the way she always did when she was being direct with him about something. She said it without accusation. Quietly. Almost gently. I froze. She smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who has known many things for a long time and has simply been waiting for the right moment to say them. Good. It is about time. She sat down across from me. You think I do not know what has been happening in my own house, Clara? I am 79 years old. I am not confused and I am not stupid. Her voice was the clearest I had heard it in months. It carried none of the softness that the trazodone had been putting there on Sunday afternoons. She was entirely herself, entirely present, and looking at me with an expression that combined so much love and so much determination that I had to press my lips together hard to hold myself together. Sit down, sweetheart. There is something I need to show you. She led me to her bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled a fireproof box from beneath a stack of folded blankets. The kind of box that people who lived through uncertain times kept their most important things inside. She set it on the bed and looked at me. Do you remember what I whispered to you at that meeting? She asked. When they said you were not going to Hawaii. I nodded. 5 words. Urgent and clear against my ear. Document everything he does now. That is what I told you, she said. Not a prophecy. An instruction. Because I knew what Franklin was planning, and I needed you to see it too. I needed you to write it down the way you write everything down, every day, in that blue notebook of yours. Because I knew you would. You are the only one who pays attention. She opened the fireproof box. Inside were bank statements going back years. Property deeds. A small digital voice recorder no larger than a lip balm. A spiral notebook covered in her careful handwriting. You have been gathering evidence for 3 weeks, she said. I have been gathering mine for 8 months. She laid the property deed for her rental property on the bed beside me. The original. With her real signature, small and precise and confident, showing clearly that no sale had ever been authorized by her. Then she laid a copy of a deed transfer document beside it. The signature on the transfer was nothing like hers. Shaky, large, unnatural. Someone had signed her name on the sale of her own property 6 years ago. The proceeds from that sale had gone into the care fund that Frank controlled. The theft had not started last month. It had started the minute he obtained access to her finances. I started noticing things in February, she said. Franklin asking about my accounts more often than made sense. Pushing for power of attorney. Getting angry when I said no. She pulled out a copy of care fund statements she had quietly requested from the bank herself months earlier, withdrawals highlighted in yellow, going back years. She picked up the recorder. I have recordings, she said, from before he ever mentioned Hawaii. Listen. She pressed play. The timestamp read October 15th, mid-afternoon. Frank's voice came through the small speaker, and something in my chest clenched to hear it. Mom, I need you to sign this power of attorney. It is for your own protection. Grandma Dot's voice on the recording was firm and unhurried. I can read, Danny. This gives you control of everything. The answer is no. Then Frank. You are not thinking clearly. You forget things. The doctor says. I am thinking perfectly clearly, Grandma Dot's voice replied, and the answer is no. A pause. And then Frank's voice dropped into a register I recognized. The voice of a man who has run out of patience for the performance of reasonableness. Then we will do this another way. With or without your signature. Grandma Dot stopped the recording and looked at me across the bed. That was when I understood he would force it. And I understood he would use you to make it look credible. Because you are a trained professional with 3 years of documented daily care records. If you were present at the evaluation and did not object, your silence would read as agreement. He needed you gone, or he needed you to not know what was coming. I had to breathe for a moment before I could speak. Why did you not just tell me? I asked. All those months ago. Why did you wait? Because I needed evidence, not just words, she said. And I needed your documentation. If I fight alone, I am a paranoid old woman who does not trust her own son. If you fight beside me with 3 years of professional care records, that is a different conversation entirely. She reached across the bed and took both of my hands in both of hers. I did not ask you to save me, Clara. I asked you to document the truth. That has always been enough. Just someone who sees me clearly and writes down what they see. I could not speak for a long time. I just held her hands and listened to the house settle around us in the dark. So what do we do? I finally asked. She smiled. We let him think he is winning. And then we show everyone what he actually is. She had already made the first move. Through a trusted friend from her church, she had contacted Adult Protective Services and requested an independent evaluation, scheduled for December 16, 2 days after Frank's arranged assessment. But we cannot warn anyone before his evaluation happens, she said. Let Dr. Morrison do his predetermined assessment. Let them believe it has worked. And then we bring in the investigators. She looked at me with something I had not seen in her face in months. Not fear. Not confusion. Not the foggy disorientation of a Sunday afternoon after Frank had been over. Pure, clear, absolute determination. They think I am a confused old woman who does not understand what is happening around her. She folded her hands in her lap. Let them keep thinking that. It will make the truth hurt more when it arrives. For the first time since I had found that deposit receipt, I was not alone in this. We were in it together. And we were going to win. Do not go anywhere. Because what happens at that evaluation dinner table will take your breath away. December 14th. 9 in the morning. Dr. Morrison arrived exactly on time, and Frank was already there, having let himself in at 8:30 with his spare key. He said he wanted to help Mom feel comfortable. Standard protocol, he told me when I appeared in the hallway. You are too emotionally involved to be present. Best if you wait in your room. I went to my room. I left the door open 2 inches, because sound carries in old houses if you know where to stand. I heard Dr. Morrison's questions come through the hallway. Soft and leading. Ruth, can you tell me what year it is? Grandma Dot's voice, clear as it always was. 2025. And who is the current president? She answered correctly. And then I heard Frank's voice, smooth and immediately helpful. You see, she answered, but she had to think about it. That is the confusion I have been describing. Grandma Dot was not confused. She was performing. She had decided, sometime between the night she showed me the fireproof box and this morning, that letting Frank believe his plan had succeeded was more useful than telling the truth in front of a doctor who had already agreed to find it. The evaluation lasted 35 minutes. When Dr. Morrison left, Frank was smiling. I heard him tell Grandma Dot that everything had gone well, that they were going to take care of everything now, that she did not need to worry. He patted her shoulder. He left humming. He had no idea that in 48 hours, everything he had built was going to come apart at the seams. December 16th. 2 in the afternoon. Adult Protective Services investigator Sandra Pierce arrived with a county social worker named Denise Marsh. I had confirmed Frank's schedule. He had client meetings across town until 5. My mother was at her weekly exercise class. It was just Grandma Dot and me, exactly as we had planned. The evaluation took 2.5 hours. They began with Grandma Dot alone, standard cognitive testing, a full mental status examination. When they called me in, Investigator Pierce was reviewing her notes. Mrs. Hennessy scored 28 out of 30, she said. That falls solidly within normal cognition for her age group. She looked at Grandma Dot. Mrs. Hennessy, do you want to relocate to a memory care facility? Grandma Dot looked at her with the clearest eyes I had ever seen on anyone. Absolutely not. I want to stay in my home with Clara. She is the only person in this house who has actually been caring for me. Pierce turned to me. Your grandmother mentioned that you keep detailed care records. I handed her the notebook. 47 pages. 3 years of daily entries. She read for nearly an hour. Every entry. Every observation. Every medication time and vital sign and recorded conversation. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I will carry with me for a long time. This is extraordinary documentation. Most family caregivers do not keep anything close to this level of detail. Then I gave her the evidence binder. 3 inches thick. Tabbed sections. Medical. Financial. Communications. Facility documents. Property records. I walked them through everything. The medication timeline showing the Sunday sedation pattern across 4 consecutive weeks. The bank statements showing $39,000 in unauthorized withdrawals over a single month. The facility intake form claiming late-stage dementia in a woman who had just scored 28 out of 30 on their cognitive assessment. The forged property deed from 6 years earlier. The family group text screenshots. The recording of Frank threatening his own mother. The emails between Frank and Dr. Morrison confirming the evaluation's outcome had been predetermined. Denise Marsh picked up the bank statement showing the November transactions and read the category labels aloud. Medical transport services. Plane tickets. Therapeutic respite program. Resort hotel rooms. Patient wellness activities. Luau packages and snorkeling excursions. She looked at investigator Pierce. This is systematic financial exploitation. Pierce made a phone call from Grandma.'s kitchen table. When she hung up, she told us she was escalating the case to the Fraud Investigation Unit and notifying the district attorney's office. Mrs. Hennessy, she said, you are not going anywhere. And Clara, this documentation may have just saved your grandmother's life. 2 days later, Frank hosted a celebration dinner. December 18th. 6:50 in the evening. 14 people in Grandma.'s dining room. The same 14 from the November meeting. My mother had made her lasagna. There was wine open and children running through the hallway and the particular giddy energy of people who believe everything has gone according to plan. The Hawaii trip was in 2 days. Luggage was packed. Sunscreen had been purchased. Someone had already downloaded a tide chart app. Frank stood up and tapped his glass. I want to make a toast, he said. We have good news. Mom's evaluation from Dr. Morrison confirmed what we have known for some time. She needs professional memory care now. Sunrise has her room ready for the 19th. We can leave for Hawaii knowing she is in safe, qualified hands. He looked around the table with the satisfied expression of a man who has managed a difficult situation beautifully. Rosalind has done a wonderful job, he said, using a name for me that he only ever used when he wanted to sound magnanimous. But Mom needs professionals now. This is what is best for everyone. 13 faces nodded. Some with relief. Some with that particular look of people who have convinced themselves that an uncomfortable truth is actually a kindness. I stood up. The room went quiet so fast it was almost physical. Actually, I said, there has been another evaluation. Adult Protective Services came on Monday. Grandma. Passed every cognitive assessment administered. She scored 28 out of 30. She does not have dementia. Frank's face went white. Rosie, he said, using the shortened version as though informality might soften what was happening. You had no right to do that without informing the family. I had every right, I said. And there is something else. I looked at him directly, and I kept my voice completely level, because I had been practicing what I wanted to say for 2 weeks and I was not going to waste it on emotion when clarity would do so much more damage. On November 7th, you came to this house after church. You hugged me. You told me I was part of this family and that you appreciated everything I was doing for Grandma. What I found when I opened your desk drawer 4 days later was a deposit receipt for Sunrise Valley Memory Care dated November 3rd. The same afternoon as the meeting where you told this room I was not going on vacation. Which one of those things is true, Frank? Am I family, or am I the help you needed out of the way while you handled the paperwork? The clock on the mantel ticked. I could hear it. And then Grandma Dot stood up. 79 years old. 118 pounds. She pushed her chair back from the table and stood up, and the room looked at her with the stunned expression of people watching something they had decided could not happen. I am not confused, Danny, she said. I know exactly what you have done. She placed the fireproof box on the center of the dinner table. You have been stealing from me for 6 years. You forged my signature to sell my rental property. You have been sedating me on Sunday afternoons to manufacture symptoms for a predetermined medical evaluation. You arranged to have me institutionalized so you could not be held accountable for the money you have already taken. And you used the money that was set aside for my care to take 14 people to Hawaii. Patricia began to cry. Nathan stared at his plate. The only person who has actually been caring for me is Clara, Grandma Dot continued. The rest of you wanted a vacation funded by my savings. And when she sat in this room and told you she had never once seen the ocean in 32 years, you laughed at her. I connected my phone to the television. Line by line I showed them what I had found. The airline tickets coded as medical transport. The resort rooms coded as therapeutic respite. The luau packages and snorkeling tours coded as patient wellness activities. The $18,000 transferred to Frank's personal account labeled caregiver reimbursement. $38,100 of Grandma Dot's care money spent on a 10-day vacation for 14 people. You told me you could not afford another ticket, I said. The trip cost $38,600. Every cent came from Grandma Dot's care fund. You were planning to watch the sunset on the ocean on her money while she sat in a locked memory care unit. My uncle stood up from his chair. His voice was shaking. Danny. Is this true? Frank could not answer. Adult Protective Services has opened a full investigation, I continued. The district attorney's office has been notified. Dr. Morrison is being reported to the state medical board for conducting a capacity evaluation with a predetermined outcome. Sunrise Valley has been informed that their deposit was obtained under false pretenses. You have one option. Return every dollar, cancel the facility intake, and leave Grandma Dot alone. Or face criminal elder abuse charges, fraud charges, and forgery charges. My mother was crying. Rosie, she said. We are a family. We can work through this together. Grandma Dot's voice came through the room like something final and clean. No, Linda. Family does not do this. Clara is my family. The rest of you are thieves. By 7:34, 9 people had left the table. The perfect family dissolved in 44 minutes. Stay with me. Because what happens in the weeks after this is the part that changed everything, and I mean everything, about the shape of my life. The next morning, Frank called. His voice was quiet in a way I had never heard from him before. Defeated in a way that had no performance left in it. He said they were canceling the Hawaii trip. I told him the full amount to be returned was $38,700, the complete total of what the APS documentation showed had been taken within the year. He was silent for a long time. Then he said fine. The transfer came through that afternoon. Sunrise Valley refunded the facility deposit, minus a cancellation fee that Frank paid out of his own account. When he called to confirm, he said I had destroyed the family. I did not destroy anything, I told him. I documented it. He hung up. I never heard his voice again. The Adult Protective Services investigation completed in mid-January. Their findings confirmed financial exploitation totaling $38,700 in unauthorized use of funds. Medical neglect concerns related to inappropriate sedation. Attempted fraudulent institutionalization. Mandatory full restitution was ordered over 36 months, with legal enforcement. Frank received probation, mandatory elder abuse education, supervised contact with grandma only, and permanent revocation of all access to her financial accounts. The district attorney offered that arrangement in lieu of trial. Frank accepted it. The state medical board investigated Dr. Morrison. Their ruling came at the end of January. Formal censure for conducting a capacity evaluation under conditions of undue influence, for predetermining a clinical finding, and for accepting $15,000 in consultation fees from Frank, a payment found in the bank records. Not sufficient to revoke his license permanently, but he was prohibited from conducting any capacity evaluations for 2 years and required to complete mandatory ethics training. The ruling is public record. The family fractured along lines that had probably always been there, just invisible because no one had ever applied enough pressure to find them. Nathan cut contact completely. His last message to me arrived 2 days after the dinner. I blocked his number. Several cousins and aunts and uncles followed his lead, choosing the version of events Frank was telling, which had apparently reframed everything as an overreaction by a difficult daughter who had always held grudges. Tell me in the comments. And if you have dealt with something similar, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Patricia reached out 3 weeks later. A short message. She said she was sorry. That she should have asked questions. That it had been easier to trust Frank's version than to look closely enough to find her own. We met for coffee in January, and she cried, and I sat across from her and let her say what she needed to say. She visits grandma monthly now. She brings her daughter. They read together on Sunday afternoons, which are peaceful now, nothing missing from the pill bottle, nothing heavy in the air. My uncle and his wife believed grandma from the night of the dinner. They cut contact with Frank and call grandma every week. Of the 14 people who sat in that living room in November, 3 remained in genuine relationship with us. 3. The enormous, loud, crowded family reduced to something small enough to fit around a kitchen table. But what sat around that table was real. My mother filed for divorce in February. The estate attorney grandma hired helped her execute a new will, properly witnessed, with every legal requirement met. Grandma named me as her power of attorney and healthcare proxy. She also told me clearly, with that particular look she gets when she wants to make sure something has landed, that it did not all go to me, that Patricia would share in it if she continued to earn her way back, and that fairness mattered more than reward. Still teaching, I told her. Even now. She smiled. Someone has to. The forged property deed was corrected and recorded properly. Frank's name was removed from every document associated with grandma's estate. I lost half my family. The relationship with my father, severed permanently. My brother's children, my niece and nephew, will grow up not knowing me because of the story Nathan chose to keep telling. Holidays will look different for the rest of my life. Some of the church friends who had known grandma for decades chose Frank's version of events because it was simpler and required less of them. But I kept something that cannot be taken back. I kept my integrity. I kept grandma's trust. I kept the ability to lie down at night and know exactly what I did and why I did it and that it was right. Some losses you do not mourn. You accept them and you keep moving. In late January, grandma and I settled into a different rhythm. Quieter. More peaceful. Real in a way that the previous version of our life together had not quite been, because the previous version had always had something hidden inside it that I had not yet found. She came off the trazodone completely. She went back to her baseline, sharper and lighter and more like herself than she had been in months. I returned to 32 hours a week at the facility, which gave me a life again, an actual life, something that existed outside these 4 walls. Grandma insisted on paying me properly for the caregiving. A real wage, she said. You gave years of your life to me, Clara. The least I can do is pay you what that time is actually worth. My income stabilized in a way it had not been in years. One Saturday morning in late January, grandma came into the kitchen while I was making coffee and turned to look at me in that particular way she has when she has already decided something and is only now telling me about it. Have you thought about actually going to see it? She said. I looked at her. The ocean, she said. Not just talking about it. Actually going. 2 weeks later, we drove to the Carolina coast on a Saturday morning. We left early, before the roads got busy, with the windows down and the heat on low, and Grandma navigating from the passenger seat using a paper map she had folded herself the night before because she said she did not trust the phone for something this important. We arrived at noon. Checked in. Changed clothes. Walked to the beach. I was 32 years old. I had spent my entire life 3 hours from the ocean and I had never seen it. We walked down the wooden steps over the dunes, and there it was. Endless. Blue-gray and moving, the sound of it coming in before we could even see the waterline, and then the sand under my shoes and the wind and the whole impossible size of it. I walked to the edge where the water met the sand. A wave came in and the cold water rushed over my feet and I could not stop it. The tears came before I even understood they were coming, just quietly and completely, the way things come when you have been holding them for a very long time. Grandma took my hand. This is what family does, sweetheart, she said. We show up for each other's firsts. I looked at her beside me in the wind, her white hair moving, her eyes on the horizon, and I thought about every beach trip I had not been invited to and every reason I had been given that was dressed up as kindness. And then I stopped thinking about them, because I was here now, and I was here with the one person who had wanted me to see this. Not someone who wanted to leave me behind. Someone who came to stand beside me when it finally happened. We stayed until the light changed. The next morning we walked out at sunrise and took a photograph. Just the two of us with the ocean behind us, the light coming up over the water, both of us squinting into it a little. When I look at that photograph now, I see something in my own face that I do not remember feeling at the time, or maybe I do, and I just did not know what to call it yet. I look free. Back home in Asheville, something else unexpected happened. Sandra Pierce, the APS investigator, called me in late January. She was organizing a caregiver training on elder abuse prevention for the following month and asked whether I would be willing to speak, to share my documentation system, to show other caregivers what consistent daily records could accomplish. I said yes. At the training, I brought the notebook and walked through the format. Daily entries. Medication times. Vital signs. Behavioral observations. Conversations and their content. Financial tracking. Appointment records. 12 caregivers came up to me afterward asking for copies, asking how to set it up for their own situations. So I built a template. 8 pages. Tabbed sections for every category. I uploaded it, made it free, shared it widely. Within 3 weeks, nearly 2,000 people had downloaded it. Messages started arriving. Stories I had not expected. This helped me prove my father was still competent when my sister tried to claim guardianship. This caught my brother taking money from my mother's account. When I showed this documentation to APS, they opened an investigation within a week. Pierce called me again. You have accidentally created something that fills a real gap, she said. This is exactly what vulnerable families need and almost never have. You may have protected people you will never meet. One afternoon in late January, Grandma and I were sitting on the front porch with sweet tea, the winter light coming in low and golden across the yard. I asked her what she wanted people to take away from everything that had happened. She thought for a long time. Looked out at the street. Then she said, tell them that old does not mean invisible. And silence does not mean consent. She turned to look at me. I am going to die someday, probably sooner than either of us wants to think about. But I am going to die here. In my house. With someone who sees me as a person. That is all I ever wanted. She paused. It is all any of us wants. I kept writing in the notebook every day, approaching 4 years of entries now. But the entries changed. They were no longer evidence. They were a record of a life being lived with dignity. February 12th. Grandma alert and in good spirits. Told me about the first time she saw the ocean, 1963, a trip she took alone the summer after she graduated. Said she was glad I had finally gotten to see it too. We made vegetable soup together and laughed over old photographs. She remembered stories about Frank as a little boy and told them without bitterness, which I thought was the most remarkable thing she had done in a long time. She did not hate him. She had simply refused to let him define the years she had left. The notebook sits in the kitchen drawer now, next to the recipe cards, next to the photograph of the two of us at the water. Someday it will be all that remains of these years. But it will tell the truth about who she was. Not the confused, declining, difficult woman they tried to make her on paper. The sharp, clear, dignified, formidable person she actually was and still is. So if you are caring for someone right now, someone the rest of the family has decided is already fading, someone whose clarity is being dismissed, whose wishes are being overridden, I want you to hear this. Write it down. Every day. Every conversation. Every moment of sharp, clear, real personhood. Not because you expect to need it. Write it down because their story deserves to be told accurately. Because when someone tries to erase a person, your documentation may be the only thing standing between them and invisibility. My father thought I was the quiet one. The one who would not push back. The one who had never seen the ocean and did not know enough to miss it. He forgot one thing. I was also the one paying attention. And attention, written down every day in a blue spiral notebook, becomes evidence. Evidence becomes truth. Truth becomes justice. And justice, when it finally arrives, does not announce itself dramatically. It sits across from you at a kitchen table in a fireproof box that a 79-year-old woman has been quietly filling for 8 months, waiting for the right moment. Grandma is 79 years old. She is still in her house. She is still sharp. She is still free. And I have finally seen the ocean. Not with the people who left me behind every single time. With the one person who made sure I got there. That is what family actually means.